Thank you. Thank you.
Right. First things first, you are obviously in the United Kingdom. Let's start with that one. Every time you are traveling abroad, the state media is screaming headlines that you are going to go and call for sanctions. They are always accusing you of throwing spanners in the works. So just to start with a clarification, this trip, what is it all about?
Well, first, before I go into the trip, I must deal with the issue of the state media. We are greatly disheartened and disappointed that we have our state media entrapped in the past, arrested in the past, thinking that when we are in an alternative movement or the opposition movement going for elections, we constitute the enemy to the people of Zimbabwe, the enemy to the state. What they forget is that because we are the alternative in government, we also are part of government, so we have every right to engage the international community, particularly in terms of two issues: the developments back home and also issues to do with reconstruction, issues to do with re-engagement. So the attitude of the state media is something that must be corrected, and it's part of what we are going to correct come July when I become the head of state. The new administration that we are going to lead is an administration for all, an administration that will entail respecting the freedom of the media, the diversity of the media, but also respecting all the other people, even those who are not necessarily in government. So state media is something that we have to move from being state-centric to being public-centric, not just supporting the state in the context of the narrow sense of government, but also supporting the public and giving the public the proper consumption of information.
Okay, now all this will happen if you win the elections.
Indeed.
And there is a big worry swirling around that there's a prospect of ballot tampering. So your supporters are confident you will win, but some are skeptical, saying this is a military junta that removed Mugabe, via a military coup. They're not going to give up power that easily. How worried are you by this accusation of ballot tampering?
Well, not worried at all. We are not worried because we know that to be worried, you don't have an answer. We are concerned. When we are concerned, we have a positive action that we can institute to try and deal with the issues. So what we are doing is to make sure that we pull all the necessary stops, leave no stone unturned in making sure that the election is not rigged, and that we have done, we are doing, and we are engaging all the necessary stakeholders within the country, and this is part of the reason why I must then answer your first question. Why are we here? We are here because we are building a global coalition for free and fair elections. We are here because we are coming here to globalize and consolidate, crystallize the voice for change, the voice for free and fair elections, the voice for an inclusive and peaceful election in Zimbabwe. To do that, we need guarantors, we need underwriters in SADC, AU, within the United Nations, and of course in the international community at large, particularly the British government, particularly the European Union, and of course the United States of America and other global superpowers, so that they also appreciate our circumstances. They also are able to shepherd, superintend our own democratic processes within the country. So that is what we are doing as a way of securing and safeguarding the possibilities of a rigged election, the possibilities of a manipulated outcome. And I must say that the momentum in the country is such a huge one that rigging, yes, they will try, but they will not succeed.
Mm-hmm. Now, talking about the issue of ballot tampering, there was some confusion with statements being circulated that you were planning a demonstration for Friday. I see your spokesperson, Luke Tamborenyoka, has issued a statement on that. What's the position?
Well, I did not issue any statement. I've been preoccupied with this very important international leg. Our politics has been at this diplomatic level, and this is the focus we have. As and when we do demonstrations, we do not hold or conduct, even call for those demonstrations in a pedestrian manner, such as the one that has been used. We don't use WhatsApp to circulate our messages. We have official platforms, and I have to announce to the people the reason for the demonstration, the scope of that demonstration, the character of that demonstration, and of course, the timing of that demonstration. What has been done by certain characters who obviously have their own sinister motive. But we are going to have more public demonstrations coming, and they will come on account of us pushing pressure and pushing our government to make sure that they resolve fundamental issues.
Okay. Another concern, obviously, is the issue of vote splitting, mainly on the premise that your ascension to the presidency saw Thokozani Kupe being expelled, and there's that whole legal battle over the name. How worried are you that maybe those schisms in the party are going to affect your electoral chances?
I'm not contesting to be the president of the MDC. Okay. I am the president of the MDC. My contest is to be the president of the Republic of Zimbabwe. So my focus is not on petty issues, party issues. My focus is to have a grand national union of all the progressive forces, progressive parties. So far, we have 7 political parties that have come together to move forward. And that is the focus. I must also make sure that I bring in and bring on some of the parties that have not been playing ball, so that there's one common grand strategy, one common omnibus, big tent, to be able to achieve a victory against the incumbent. This is not just a mere election. This is an election against poverty. This is an election against hunger. This is an election against unemployment. It is an election against hopelessness. It is an election against you being here in the diaspora. We want you back home, running one of the best television stations in Zimbabwe, in Africa.
And we represent. Yes, I must make mention, Mr. President, that we had President Tsvangirai, an icon, the face of the struggle in Zimbabwe, on the African continent, who passed on in February. I've had to come in. His boots are very big, but I've tried to fill them in. And I can tell you that the boots are quite heavy, but I'm carrying them, and I'm running, and I'm going to win. I can assure you. I can assure you that we are giving a fighting chance to the people of Zimbabwe as we go into this election. Why are we saying so? We are saying so because we know that in any struggle, we must be able to stand up and be counted, and to define a narrative to which people have to come through. We did it before as a people. During the liberation struggle, we forgot about race. We forgot about class. We forgot about tribes. We forgot about all the other classes that may separate us, to look at the great idea of liberation. We achieved that liberation, but that liberation was checked halfway. Why? Because of exhausted nationalism. Why? Because we had those who came into power failing to realize that occupying power is not for self-empowerment or self-entitlement. Title is not for the self, but for others. We have not done things for others, but for ourselves, which has been the biggest problem on the African continent. That when leaders assume positions of responsibility, they forget that the primary objective is service and sacrifice. And they begin to think about themselves, building a parasitic elite that is focusing on self-aggrandizement at the expense of the populace. That is what we need to cure. And this is where our mandate is. This is where our mission is, to make sure that the liberation agenda that has been checked halfway is fulfilled. I have a lot of respect of Robert Mugabe the Young, though I do not have any respect of Robert Mugabe the Old, because he betrayed the ideals of Robert Mugabe the Young, who was a liberation icon. The Old was a person who betrayed what he stood for when he was young. I suppose there's something wrong with age, but I don't think so. Age comes with wisdom, but with Mr. Mugabe it came alone. And these are the things we want to make sure we are able to deal with, particularly for our leaders on the African continent. And this is why I'm saying, as a young man who is an advocate, who is an African, who is a Democrat, who is a believer in constitutionalism, who is a believer in the rule of law, who is a believer in vision, everything in Africa rises or falls with leadership. Once we get our leadership right, we get everything right. The shortage in Africa is not a shortage of resources, but a shortage of leadership, which is manifesting itself in a shortage of many other things. When you see disease in Africa, you are not seeing disease, you are seeing a death of leadership. That is the first thing we have to cure. How do we cure it? We cure it by making sure that we put Zimbabwe on the path to a free and fair election. How do we achieve a free and fair election? We have put certain benchmarks to achieve that free and fair election, so that we are able, when we go to an election, to allow Zimbabweans to define themselves, so that we go back to the ideal of the liberation struggle. One man, one woman, one vote. Let the people decide. Let the people choose their leaders. In Africa, our tragedy has been the tragedy of self-reproduction. People coming to tell us that they are new when we know that they're sterile and finished in terms of the narrative that they are giving. And that is where we want to take our country back to. And this is where we are going to correct, to say in terms of reforms, let us have reforms for free and fair elections. We have articulated a number of issues we have said we want to put in place in terms of resources, in terms of reforms, in terms of benchmarks, so that the trajectory to a new election is an election that is beyond contestation. And we count on the international community to support the initiative for a free and fair election. This is why we count on the global prefects of democracy in Africa, in terms of the AU, SADC, in the world, in terms of the EU, the United Nations, and other big powers, including the United Kingdom. We count on you to put a case for governance, for free and fair elections, and for making sure that we have a democratic election in Zimbabwe come 3 months' time. What do we want to see? We want to see accountability in terms of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, which is supposed to be independent, but not entirely independent. We want to see the putting in place of the issue of the ballot paper and its auditing, because it has been a source of contestation in the past. We want to see the auditing of the biometric voter registration program that has been put in place. We want to also see international observation, international oversight, which is very important. Underseeing and underwriting of this election by the international community is very key. Those are the reforms we'd want to see put in place within the shortest space of time. Some may say there's no time because there's 3 months. It's not a question of time. It's a question of political will. And what we have seen is that there is no political will on the part of Mr. Mnangagwa, who is not a representation of the new, but a same perpetuation of the old. In fact, I must say, a lot of people were asking me, has there been any change in Zimbabwe? There's been change without change. What we have seen is just a transformation of movement of power from one person to another within the same system. We are seeing a replication and a perpetuation of the same Robert Mugabe politics. Politics of marginalization, corruption, politics of unemployment, politics of making sure that people are shut out of decision-making and very important leadership circles. So I must say, as we go into this election, we are just going there with all the difficulties we have. We've managed to crank the nation. We've managed to put the nation on a path to victory. I can tell you that the mood in the country is exciting. People are beginning to understand our new policies, our new politics, our new strategies, and they are connecting with our message. That connection is very important because it is the time for young people. Yes, our old generation did their bit in the liberation, but you can't be a hero of two struggles. The struggle for liberation had its own heroes, Mr. Mnangagwa and Mr. Mugabe included, but now the liberation agenda is gone. It is the struggle for transformation, and we are expecting ourselves as young people to be the heroes of the transformation agenda. Having said that, I have a vision. The vision I have is to see the new Zimbabwe promise, to see Zimbabwe as a successful country in the family of nations, to see Zimbabwe being a friend of the United Kingdom.